Excuse me. Partly through the third hour, Nikolai felt the gateway open to him for rest and oneness, and he allowed himself to expand into it. At a time, after a time, the feeling dissolved, and Nikolai sat motionless and rested, wondering vaguely why the teacher was delaying in making an obvious placement. When he looked up, he was surprised to find Otaki-san's eyes on his face, and not on the Go band. They're playing some Japanese game called Go, by the way. What is wrong, teacher? Have I made an error? Otaki-san examined Nikolai's face closely. No, Nico. There was no particular brilliance in your last two plays, but also no fault. But how can you play while you daydream? Daydream? I am not daydreaming, teacher. Were you not? Your eyes were defocused and your expression empty. In fact, you did not even look at the board while making your plays. You placed the stones while gazing out into the garden. Nikolai smiled and nodded. Now he understood. Oh, I see. In fact, I just returned from resting, so of course I didn't have to look at the board. Explain to me, please, why you did not have to look at the board, Nico. I'm resting. Nikolai could see that Otaki-san did not understand, and this confused him, assuming as he did that mystic experience was common. Otaki-san sat back and took another of the mint drops that he habitually sucked to relieve pains in his stomach, resulting from years of tight control under the pressures of professional play. Now tell me what you mean when you say you were resting. I suppose resting isn't the correct word for it, teacher. I don't know what the word is. I have never heard anyone give name to it, but you must know the sensation I mean. The departing without leaving, the flowing the flowing into all things, and understanding all things. Nikolai was embarrassed. The experience was too simple and basic to explain. It was as though the teacher had asked him to explain breathing or the scent of flowers. Nikolai was sure that Otaki-san knew exactly what he meant. After all, he had only to recall his own rest times. Why did he ask these questions? Otaki-san reached out and touched Nikolai's arm. I know, Nico, that this is difficult for you to explain, and I believe I understand a little of what you experience. Not because I have experienced it, but because I have read of it. For it has always attracted my curiosity. It is called mysticism. Nikolai laughed. Mysticism. But surely, teacher, have you ever talked to anyone about this? How do you phrase it? Departing without leaving. Well, no. Why would anyone talk about it? Not even our good friend Kishikawa-san? No, teacher. Never came up. I don't understand why you're asking me these questions. I am confused. I am beginning to feel shame. Otaki-san pressed his arm. No, don't feel shame. Don't be frightened. You see, Nico, what you experience, what you call resting, is not very common. Few people experience these things, especially in a light and partial way when they are young. This experience is what saintly men strive to achieve through discipline and meditation, and foolish men seek through drugs. Throughout all ages and all cultures, a certain fortunate few have been able to gain this state of calm and oneness with nature. I use the words to describe it because they are words I have read, without years of rigid discipline. Without years of rigid discipline. Evidently, it comes to them quite naturally, quite simply. Such people are called mystics. It is an unfortunate label because it carries connotations of religion and magic about it. In fact, all the words used to describe this experience are rather theatrical. What you call a rest, others call ecstasy. Nikolai grinned uncomfortably at this word. How could the most real thing in the world be called mysticism? How could the quietest emotion imaginable be called ecstasy? You smile at the word, Nico, but surely it is pleasurable, is it not? Pleasurable. I never thought of it that way. It is necessary. Necessary? Well, how would one live in and day out without times of rest? Otaki-san smiled. Some of us are required to struggle along without such rest. Excuse me, teacher, but I cannot imagine a life like that. What would be the point of living a life like that? Otaki-san nodded. He had found in his reading that mystics regularly reported an inability to understand people who lack the mystic gift. He felt a bit uneasy when he recalled that when mystics lose their gift, and most of them do at some time or another, they experience panic and deep depression. Some retreat into religion to rediscover the experience through the mechanics of meditation. Some even commit suicide. So pointless does life without mystic transport seem. Nico, I've always been intensely curious about mysticism, so please permit me to ask you questions about this rest of yours. In my readings, mystics who report their transports always use such gossamer terms. So many seeming contradictions, so many poetic paradoxes. It is as though they were attempting to describe something too complicated to be expressed in words. Or too simple, sir. Yes, perhaps that is it. Too simple. Otaki-san pressed his fist against his chest to relieve the pressure and took another mint drop. Tell me, how long have you had these experiences? Always. Since you were a baby? Always. I see. How long do these experiences last? It doesn't matter, teacher. There is not time there. It is timeless. No. There is neither time nor timelessness. Otaki-san smiled and shook his head. Am I to have the gossamer terms and poetic paradoxes from you as well? Nikolai realized that these were bracketing oxymorons, made that which was infinitely simple seem chaotic, but he didn't know how to express himself with the clumsy tools of words. Otaki-san came to his aid. So are you saying that you have no sense of time during these experiences? You do not know how long they last? I know exactly how long they last, sir. When I depart, I don't leave. I am where my body is, as well as everything else. I am not daydreaming. Sometimes the rest lasts a minute or two, sometimes it lasts hours. It lasts for as long it is needed. And do they come often, these rests? This varies. Twice or 3 times a day at most, but sometimes go a month without a rest. When this happens, I miss them very much. I become frightened that they may never come back. Can you bring one of these rest periods on at will? No, but I can block them. And I must be careful not to block them away if I need one. How can you block them away? By being angry or by hating. You can't have this experience if you hate. How could I? The rest is the very opposite of hate. Is it love then? Love is what it might be, if it concerned people, but it doesn't concern people. What does it concern? Everything. Me, those two are the same. When I am resting, everything and I don't know how to explain. You become one with everything. Yes, no, not exactly. I don't become one with everything. I return to being one with everything. Do you know what I mean? I am trying to. Please take this rest you experienced a short time ago while we were playing. Describe to me what happened. Nikolai lifted his palms helplessly. How can I do that? Try. Begin with, we were playing and you had placed stone 56 and go on. It was stone 58, teacher. Well, 58 then. What happened? Well, the flow of my play was just right, and it began to bring me to the meadow. It always begins with some kind of flowing motion. A stream, a river, maybe the wind making waves in a field of rice. The glitter of leaves moving in a breeze, clouds flowing by. And for me, if the structure of the ghost stones is flowing classically, they can bring me to the meadows. The meadow. Yes. That's the place I expand into. It's how I recognize that I am resting. Is it a real meadow? Yes, of course. A meadow you visited at one time? A place in your memory. It's not in my memory. I've never been there when I was diminished. Diminished? You know, when I'm in my body and not resting. You consider life, normal life, to be diminished state then? I consider time spent at rest to be normal. Time like this, temporary, and yes, diminished. Tell me about the meadow, Nico. It is triangular, and it slopes uphill away from me. The grass is tall. There are no animals. Nothing has ever walked on the grass or eaten it. There are flowers, a breeze, warm, pale sky. I'm always glad to be the grass again. You are the grass. We are one another, like the breeze and the yellow sunlight. We are all mixed in together. I see. Your description of the mystic experience resembles others I have read. And this meadow is what the writers call your gateway, your path. Do you ever think of it in those terms? No. So what happens then? Nothing. I am at rest. I'm everywhere at once, and everything is unimportant and delightful. And then I begin to diminish. I separate from the sunlight in the meadow, and I contract again back to my body self. And the rest is over. Nikolai smiled uncertainly. Suppose I am not describing it very well, teacher. It's not the kind of thing one describes. No, you describe it very well, Nico. You have evoked a memory in me that I have almost lost, once or twice when I was a child. In the summer, I think, I experienced brief transports such as you describe. I remember once that most people have occasional mystic experiences when they are children, but soon outgrow them and forget them. Will you tell me something else? How is it you're able to play Go while you are transported, while you are in the meadow? Well, I am here as well as there. I depart, but I don't leave. I am part of this room, in that garden. And me, Nico, are you part of me too? Nikolai shook his head. There are no animals in my rest place. I am the only thing that sees. I see for us all, for the sunlight, for the grass. I see. And how can you play your stones without looking on the board? How do you know where the lines cross? How do you know where I placed my last stone? Nikolai shrugged. It was too obvious to explain. I am part of everything. Teacher, I share. No, I flow with everything. The Go band, the stones, the board, and I are almost amongst one another. How can I not know the patterns of play? You see from within the board then. Within and without are the same thing, but see isn't exactly right either. If one is every place, he doesn't have to see. Nikolai shook his head. I can't explain. Otaki-san pressed Nikolai's arm lightly and then withdrew his hand. I won't question you further. I confess that I envy the mystic peace you find. I envy most of your gift for finding it so naturally, without the concentration and exercise that even holy men must apply in search of it. But while I envy it, I almost feel some fear on your behalf. If the mystic ecstasy has become, as I suspect it has, a natural and necessary part of your inner life, then what will become of you? Should this gift fade? Should these experiences be denied you? I cannot imagine that happening, teacher. I know. But my reading has revealed to me that these gifts can fade. The path to inner peace can be lost. Something can happen that fills you with constant and unrelenting hate or fear, and then it would be gone. The thought of losing the most natural and most important psychic activity Nikolai. With a brief rush of panic, he realized that fear of losing it, it might be fear enough to cause him to lose it. He wanted to be away from this conversation, from these new and incredible doubts. His eyes lowered on the Go van. He considered his reaction to such a loss. What would you do, Nico? Otaki-san repeated after a moment of silence. Nikolai looked up from the board, his eyes calm and expressionless. If someone took my rest times from me, I would kill him.